.NET for Devices presents EvenTiles Part 12, Improving Periodic Task Creation. Hello once again. We're gonna talk again about EvenTiles, and last time I promised you that we would talk about how to exchange data between the application and our periodic task, but instead we're going to do something different because we need to improve the way our periodic task is created. And for that, the first thing we're going to do is open our app.xaml.cs file, and we're going to make sure to add some application settings here, actually one application setting. And in order to do that, what we're going to do is define a key for that particular setting. So I'm going to define a public constant string, and this time we're going to call this our key periodic task scheduled, and we just give it a name, more or less a meaningful name, being key underscore PTS. And we're also going to create a public static property, and that static property is of type Boolean, and it's going to indicate whether or not our periodic task is supposed to run if our application is started. And we need to do that just in order to renew the subscription to our periodic task, because if we don't do that, our periodic task will expire after 14 days. So if the application is started within 14 days, we're just going to renew its subscription. Now initially, inside our app.xaml.cs file, what we're going to do is set our periodic task scheduled to false, and then we're just going to make use of a couple of events to check if that application setting is set currently to true or false. So if our application is launching, what we're going to do is figure out whether or not we have a application setting containing that key periodic task scheduled. If so, then we can just assign that Boolean property to its value, because then we know that that value was stored previously. So we're going to do that by setting our periodic task scheduled to, and then I need to cast to the application settings. So I'm going to cast to a Boolean, because that application settings is just an ordinary dictionary returning objects. So if we have that key defined inside our application settings, then we can assign it to our property. The same is true if our application is activated again after tombstoning. So I'm just copying that same statement there, and that is only necessary if we are tombstoned, not in case of a Mango fast application switching. And if our application is deactivated, or if our application is closing, well, in those situations we're simply going to store our Boolean property periodic task scheduled, and we're just going to store it in that particular entry in our app settings. So I can copy that statement again and also do the same thing in closing. So with that, we are done with our app.xaml.cs file modifications. We now store a Boolean value indicating whether or not our background task is running, and inside our main application we're going to modify some functionality as well, or we're going to add some functionality. So what we're going to do here is just making sure that if our periodic agent is started, we're going to set our Boolean property periodic task scheduled to true. And at the same time, if our periodic agent is stopped or being removed, then we're going to set that property to false. And in that way we always have the right reflection inside our Boolean property whether or not our background task or periodic agent is currently running. And what we're going to do to renew that periodic task, so to reassure that it continues running even after 14 days, assuming that our user starts our application within 14 days, in the constructor of our main page, what we're going to do is check whether or not our periodic task is currently running, and we can do that by using that Boolean property that we just created. If our periodic task is scheduled, then what we're going to do is simply starting our periodic task again. Now to clean up my code slightly, I'm also going to remove this private instance variable, and because of the fact that we're only going to use that EvenTiles periodic task variable inside our start periodic agent method. And with that we can at least test out this functionality. So our build is succeeded, we didn't make any error there. And in order to test out the application, what I can do is set a breakpoint in the main page constructor on that start periodic agent method call. So here's the application running. I'm gonna add a tile to the start screen, and then we're just gonna terminate our application. Then explicitly we need to stop debugging because the periodic agent is still running. So I'm stopping debugging, and then I'm going to start debugging again. And my expectation is that we are going to stop on that breakpoint because we have a periodic task running currently. Well, that is the case. So we stopped on that breakpoint. I can now continue single stepping. So we're just going to step inside that start periodic agent method. And the first thing we're going to do there is remove a periodic agent. And when we are removing that periodic agent, what we're also going to do is set our Boolean property app periodic task scheduled to false. Then we're going to continue by creating that periodic agent. So we're going to in fact renew its schedule. So we're going to add it again to the service, and we set our periodic task scheduled property to true inside our app class. Then we're just going to continue running, and if we are going to remove our tile from the start screen and then terminate the application again, well, now the expectation is that we are not stopping on that breakpoint because this time we don't have a periodic task running. So if we start EvenTiles right now, we immediately see our main form or our main page visible there. So we just pinned a tile on our start screen again, and what we're now going to do is use the application settings to disallow our application to run periodic agents. So we're going to go to the settings, to the applications, to the background tasks. I'm going to click on EvenTiles, and I'm just going to turn off its periodic agent or its background task, and we're not going to turn it on after the application starts again. So we leave that checkbox unchecked there, and let's see what's going to happen right now. So what we're going to do is just activate EvenTiles again, and we will be attached to the debugger again. So we stop on that breakpoint because currently we still have a periodic agent running. So we're going to quickly remove that, and then inside our constructor what we are going to try is actually add that periodic agent again. And what you can see now, if we're going to try and schedule it again, that we are getting an exception, an invalid operation exception. The reason is that we disallowed our application to use a periodic task, and that automatically means that that periodic task scheduled property will not be set this time. Now what I still need to do inside the application is just remove our tile from the start screen, and if we are starting now, you can see that hey, we are not stopping on that breakpoint, and you also saw a warning that the user had disabled periodic tasks for our application. Now there is one more thing to do, because we can get another exception when we are trying to create a periodic task, and that exception is a scheduled service exception, and that will be thrown each and every time when we are trying to start a background task inside our application, and if on the device of the user other applications already have background tasks running, because there is a limited number of background tasks that can run inside one single device, just to, like make sure that we're not using too much memory or draining the battery too fast. So if we are trying to start a background agent, it might get this scheduler service exception being thrown inside our application, and then what we need to do is just inform the user that there might be too many background agents enabled, and that the user can disable those background agents just by using the settings application inside the phone, as I showed to you earlier when we were disabling our periodic task for EvenTiles. And with that we have all the functionality to properly create and terminate and reschedule periodic tasks. So the next time we're going to talk about how to exchange data between our EvenTiles application and our periodic task.